Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining the GMP Academy live webinar around custom bidding. We're very happy to have you today. My name is Omer. I'm a senior programmatic media manager.
And I'm Erwan. I'm a technical solution consultant on display product within the Google Marketing Platform.
And today we'll be co-hosting together our webinar. So our agenda will be first we talk about what is custom bidding in DV360. Then we're going to talk about a few common use cases. What is transaction value? What is our weighted conversions? How we can set it up and activation, measuring success. And we're going to finish it off with a product roadmap, what's coming up with custom bidding, and a QA with pre-submitted questions and live QA from the chat. So we can start. So what is custom bidding? In order to understand what custom bidding is, I want to do a reminder of the Google marketing technology journey. So prior to digital, marketing would largely be broadcast based on where you would effectively hit an audience in an environment, but with the understanding that not everyone is relevant. As long as you reach the majority of your target audience cost effectively, it worked. In the precision area, defined by search and programmatic display, we had the obsession about one-on-one marketing, being very precise, finding the right user in the right time. Today, in the predictive area, we try and deliver the best of both worlds in a privacy-safe way. How do we help you, as a marketer, deliver reach to both existing and new customers in the most targeted, personalized manner, while respecting customer opt-in privacy settings? And this is why we introduced custom bidding. Custom bidding in DV360 combines your unique insights with the power of Google machine learning algorithms to achieve results specific to your business needs. Not all impressions or conversions are created equal, and instead of optimizing on traditional CPC or CPA, you can now optimize on CP, whatever you want, using custom bidding. So in the next two slides, I'm going to go through kind of a high-level overview of what custom bidding and how it looks compared to standard biddings. In this slide, we have an introduction to standard automated bidding in DV360. Basically, you select from a list of readily available KPIs that we have with auto bidding. Could be CPC, could be CPA, could be viewable CPM, and many others. And the algorithm will take into consideration all the signals when the user sees an ad. What signals? So for example, geography, browser, time of day, and many more. And of course, those are all dependent on the user privacy settings. Then the algorithm will optimize on those data points, and the machine will learn from historical data. Then the machine will bid for impressions, and eventually will run results back into the system. With custom bidding, you add an additional signal, and a very important one, you actually bring your own insights. DV360 builds predictive models that learn to optimize bids based on your custom impression scores. Firstly, you identify KPIs you want to optimize towards. No matter what is the KPI, we can actually work with. Secondly, the algorithm will use the simple script using one of the templates below that Arwan will introduce to you soon and elaborate on which one we have, that tells DV360 how much an impression is worth based on your KPIs. Over there, DV360 uses the script to assign values to add impressions for you, creating a bespoke bidding algorithm that automatically maximizes impression values for you. Note that with custom bidding, your script tells Google bidding algorithms what to optimize for, not what exact bid price to set. This allows our algorithm to account for things like budget, post-impression conversions, real-time auction dynamics, and more, eliminating all the hassle we had before. Let's have a look of an example of using custom bidding compared to auto bidding, and what are the options that we have for each one. So let's say you work with an online advertiser. With auto bidding, you can optimize on flight purchase, and all flights are considered the same. You have a pixel, someone converted and bought a ticket. It could be a $100 ticket, it could be a $500 ticket. The platform and the algorithm will see it as a conversion. Essentially, with custom bidding, you can actually use all different factors like flight prices, number of passengers, and many more, and optimize towards each one directly. You can even go to the extent of tracking customer loyalty, have platinum member versus gold member, You can actually optimize on how they converted, how much they pay, and many, 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 many more. Okay, so to summarize the first part of the introduction of what custom bidding is, let's have a look on the benefits. So the first benefit of custom bidding is that you can leverage your business insight. No need to limit yourself to optimizing based on conversions that act as a proxy for the real value of your impression or your KPI. You can actually optimize towards your end goal. Secondly, you can automatically hit your spend targets. If you choose to spend 100% of your budget, we will make sure that happens while automatically optimizing for the highest possible return of investment. No need to manually adjust sophisticated decision trees anymore. Of course, you can also choose to optimize ROAS while staying under budget if you prefer, but if you really want to hit all of your budget while reaching your end goal, custom bidding is a tool for you. And lastly, customize your goal and leave the rest to Google. You tell us what's important for your business goal, and we'll do the rest. We use 40+ signals, including auction dynamics detection and probability of conversions, to make sure we can get you the best value for your spend and reach your precise targeted KPIs. Okay, so that's great, but now let's talk about which data I can use with custom bidding. So using custom bidding, you are able to directly optimize towards transaction value. You can leverage the business data you're collecting in your FlightIQ variables for direct campaign optimization. You can also leverage the custom weighted value of multiple flight conversions, pixels for optimization. And lastly, you can optimize to GA goals like time on site, retention, and many other GA goals that we have with GA360. Now let's talk about the custom bidding use cases. We're going to talk about 4 different use cases. The one will be transaction ROAS, the second one will be weighted conversions, then we're going to talk about customer value, and lastly, brand. We're going to talk about what are the benefits for each one and what is the difference between each one. So transaction value. You can essentially optimize towards the value of a score and score your impressions. So basically, if you have, let's say you're a retail company and you have a user that bought a product in $10 and a user that bought a product in $100, you can actually value them differently and you can actually optimize towards them differently. Of course, the retailer is only an example. We have many different advertisers and many different transactions, and you can actually decide what is the value that you want. It doesn't have to be money, it could be other things as well, but this is just a very simple example. Another one that I specifically really like is optimize towards your most valuable conversions. That means, let's take the retail client that we have. He has users that are subscribing to buy every month. They have clients who are doing one-off purchase, and they have clients that are only signing up to the newsletter. So you can essentially build a script that gives a weight to each one of those conversions, and the algorithm, the custom bidding algorithm, will know how to prioritize each one and how to bid on each one. So he will find users that are likely to buy a subscription for purchase, and he will pay probably more and give a higher bid and try different types of targeting. And with one-off purchase, this is still a user that will likely to put in money, so we will still put a higher bid, but not as much as a subscription. And users that are only likely to sign up to the newsletter, we still want to find them. We don't want to give up on them, but for them, we're going to give a lower bid. And all of this is happening automated with custom bidding. The algorithm, as you can see over here, the script is giving the value of 10 to subscription, the value of 7 to one-off purchase, and the value of 1 to a newsletter sign up. But they are all still considered, and we are trying to find all users that are going to be interacting with our retail company. Yeah, so now I'm going to move it to Arwan, who's going to introduce you to customer value variables.
So next, we can also use custom variables within Floodlight to score our impressions. Basically, if we go back to the flight example we had at the beginning, we realized that a given Floodlight, so a given conversion, doesn't have the same value depending on the number of passengers, for instance. With custom bidding, you can use a function to define a score that will give a higher value to a conversion that has a higher number of passengers than an impression that led to a conversion with a lower value of users. And then you let the Google machine learning optimize towards the values. That means optimize towards the number of passengers. And all because we are able to take account into custom floodlight variables that was implemented on your website. Now GA goals. So GA goals, here in the same manner, we are scoring the conversions. Sorry, we are scoring the impression based on the fact that they are generating GA goals. So how we do that is because we have a native integration or native linking between DV360 and GA360. So GA360 knows when a goal happens if it's attributed to DV360 and exactly to which DV360 impression. And we're going to use this linking to import back GA goals into our system. And basically using the GA goal function that would tell the algorithm which impressions have been attributed a GA goal. And if the GA goal is a number of time on the time of visits, then we can use this as a KPI. And once again, the Google machine learning will optimize the KPI, which means it will optimize the GA goal. So long story short, we can use GA goal to have DV360 campaigns optimized towards the goal directly. Branding is a bit easier to get because we are scoring directly impressions. So basically, the script will give a score to the impression based on attribute from the impression itself. So was it viewable? If the impression was viewable, we're going to give it a higher value. If the impression is a video and the video was completed, we're going to give it a higher value. And once again, the algorithm will try to maximize the value. And in our case, that would mean just maximize the viewability. And then we have a lot of existing features. So we've seen a few use cases, which are like the most common use cases, but you can imagine your own KPIs, your own use cases using all these features. So you can score impression based on the fact that they've generated a conversion, a post-click conversion, a post-view conversion. You can score impression based on their creative dimension. You can also score impression based on the exchange, on the fact they clicked, on the fact that they're viewed, etc. So now in this stage, we're going to go through an example, a use case where we are going to build a script together and implement it in the interface. So we are going to take an example of a marketer that is selling cars. And the brief is they're launching a new unbreakable car, and they'd like to promote the design, but also generate pre-orders. So the first thing to do would be to go to the trafficker and check the data, the available data, to optimize our campaign. So the trafficker would first look at the pre-orders because the marketer wants to generate pre-orders, and that's only 100 floodlight impressions. So floodlight impression is the number of times the floodlight was triggered, no matter if it was attributed to a campaign or not. So we only had 100 pre-orders in the last 30 days, which is usually not enough to build a model out of and to have the model running and generate pre-orders. So we also look at something upper in the funnel, which is visits. So to generate the pre-orders, you need to visit the website, and there is a little more or less data here with 10K floodlight impressions over the last 30 days. So now we're going to go to the analyst, and we'll take the brief and translate it into a KPI that we want the algorithm to optimize for. So first thing of the brief is like they'd like to promote the design. So the analyst thinks if they want to promote the design, that means we want the impressions to be viewable. We want people to see the design. So we want our campaign to have viewable impression. We have a lot of impressions, so we're going to give it a small score. That's not the most important part of the brief, but that's still important. So we're going to give it a score of 0.1. Now we know that there is not enough pre-orders to generate a performing algorithm, so we are going to give a bit of value for impressions that led to a visit on the website, and we give it a score of 1. So that's floodlight visit. Impression that led to a floodlight visit will be given a score of 1. And then because there are 1,000 times more visits than pre-orders, we're going to give a score of 1,000 to the actual pre-orders. That's something that happens rarely. It's not an event that is very common, but when it happens, that's exactly what we want. So we give it a score, a high score, and now we're gonna need to write this in a way that it's understandable to custom bidding. So custom bidding script needs to be written in a Python syntax with a bunch of functions that you can use to write this. And we're going to go through a few of them, the ones that are useful in our case. So the first function that's useful is the total conversion count function. So basically this function will execute on every impression. And if the impression has generated a floodlight activity ID, according to the model, the attribution model. So by default, if you let 0, the attribution model will be a floodlight model, which is post-clicks and post-view. And then the second function is active view viewed function. So that applies directly to impression. So for each impression, if the impression was measured as viewable according to active view technology, then we will return true. And if it was not measured as viewable, then we will return false. And now we want to aggregate. So we need aggregate function because a given impression can generate both. It can be viewed and also generate a conversion. Actually, that can also, a given impression can generate a conversion visit and a conversion pre-order. So we want to aggregate if a given impression has generated several of our use case, then we want to aggregate the value. And to do that, we have two functions that we can use: sum aggregate, which will sum the value of all the action that the impression has generated, and max aggregate, we will take the max value of all the action. And I'm going to go in a bit deeper on how exactly it works. So if you look at this path, so we have two impressions that led to two conversions. The first thing and then we have a function that says sum aggregate. So an impression that's led to a conversion A will be given a score of 0.9 and a conversion B 0.3. So the first thing is which impression takes credit for the conversions. In the last click model, both conversions will be attributed to the last impression, this one. And then because we have a sum aggregate, so because both conversions are attributed to this one, and we're aggregating the results, so the total value of this. So this impression will be scored 0, and this one will be scored 1.2, which gives a total impression score of 1.2. And in max aggregate, so exactly the same use case. Both conversions will be attributed to the last impression, but this time I'm using a max aggregate. So the value is not the sum of the value of each conversion, but the maximum, which is 0.9. And so the total value over cost, so this pass cost $3, and it's generated a value of 0.9. So the total value over cost is 0.3. Remember that what the algorithm wants to do is to maximize the impression value over cost. So now that we've seen how to write our script, here is the final script that we want to write. So we're going to use a sum aggregate. That's because if an impression was visible and generated a visit and then pre-order, we want to sum the value of this because that's a normal funnel, and we don't want to lose value on the way. So that's why I choose to use a sum aggregate. If the impression was viewed, its value will be 0.1. If then the impression generated a visit, we're going to add the value of a visit, which is 1. So that's 1.1 altogether. And then if eventually generated a pre-order, we're going to give it a value of 1,000. And now we're going to see together how to implement it in DV360, now that we've got our Python script ready. So first, I'm going to go to the interface to show you where to implement the script. So let me go back to partner level. Then in the resources, you have a custom bidding menu. And here we can create a new algorithm. And I'm going to, because this is a test account, so that's my test account, it doesn't have a lot of actual impression. And so I'm using actually an account that has a few impressions as a test. So here is my algorithm, okay? And now I'm going to create a script out of it. So I'm going to create a new script. And I have it here actually. So I've already filled it with the real floodlight IDs. So I'm just going to take it from here and pass it here. So the first thing what we want to check is that the syntax is correct. So did I write something that makes sense from Python syntax? So first I'm going to check the syntax. It is verified, so there is no syntax mistake in my script. Second thing is I want to test it. So I want to check if this actual script is really scoring impressions properly. So to do so, I can test it against a sample of impressions, of real impressions. So when it's going to be live, it's going to learn. This script is going to be used on historical data. That means last 30 days of impression. When we test it, we're going to test it against a sample of impressions from the advertiser. There's 3 types of sample. We're going to start with an all impression sample. So it's going to select randomly 10,000 impressions from my advertiser, and we are going to run the script against those 10,000 impressions. So if I test the script now, wait a few. So we can see that there was 10,000 impressions in the sample. And now the second important metric is how many of them were scored. So did the script score all of our impression? We are usually aiming at 100% here, because we want our script to always give a value to an impression, either 0 if the impression was not viewed on, didn't generate a visit nor pre-order, the value will be 0, but that's still a score. And in all other cases, it's going to give it a positive value. So in my case, 5.8% of my impressions were given a positive value. That's important to have at least a few positive value, because the algorithm is going to learn on those positive value. So we want here to have at least a very small percentage of positive value. And then, so here it's a test on all impressions. Because I'm scoring on active view, we have a value. Then if I change the script, so it's a little parenthesis just to show you, I just remove the condition on active view. And then if I test again this impression, this sample, because this test account actually don't really have conversion, there is no positive impression value, because in the sample, it was a bit random, there was no impression that led to a conversion. So that's normal. And then in that case, you can use samples that are a bit restrained. So you can narrow down the sample into not 10,000 impressions that are completely random, but only 10,000 impressions that generated the conversion. And then if you test it against a sample that is a bit narrowed down, we should expect this time to have at least a few positive impressions. So here in my case, unfortunately, it's a test account, so actually I don't have any impression in the history what generated conversion. So that's why I have 0%. But you should expect to have a little positive impression when you are narrowing down the conversion. So now that was the end of the parenthesis, just to explain you the different type of samples that you can use to test your impression and to see if you're scoring positively impression. So next step will be to create the algorithm. When you create it, that means the machine learning will start to create a model to modelize the impression, the bids, based on your script. So, and that's the next step that you want. So after a few days, so it's going to take a few days to create a model. After a few days, so this is the same algorithm that I used, but that it's already computed. After a few days, the model is going to be ready. Okay. And the thing you want to look at this stage before applying it to a line item would be that you have a minimum of 1,000 positive impression value over the last 30 days, which brings back to our goal when we're testing the script to have a minimum of positive impression value, because when you apply it to a real campaign, if you don't have those 1,000 positive impression value, it's likely that the model will not work. So in our case, we had like a lot of impression in the last 30 days, and we were able to score positively 250 of them. So that's good. The model is actually ready, and we can apply it to a real campaign. And to do so, I'm going to go to a line item. And then in the bid strategy, I can select an algorithm, use my algorithm, and then I can decide whether I want to maximize the value. So the value is defined once again by the script that you've written, or give it a target value, a target impression value, and spend the maximum of your budget within this target. So that's it for the demo. And now we're going to see how to measure success. So now that we've implemented a custom bidding algorithm, it's been modeled, and we want to validate that this new model, this new KPI is actually bringing value to you. And to do so, we recommend to use A/B test. So with experiment and lift, you can split the population of users within two groups. And in one group, you're going to target them with a standard bidding, for instance. And the second group, you're going to target them with custom bidding. You're going to let it run for a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, and then look at the data to check that the custom bidding algorithm has actually generated more value. So the group that was targeted with the custom bidding algorithm has generated more value than the group that wasn't. And we have a couple of indicators to do so. So if you look, you can have them directly from the report builder, but also directly in the experiment and lift. So here in this example, what's important to look at is the total custom impression value. So the control group was not optimizing for the impression value, and it generated a value of 2 million. Whereas the experiment group here, which was optimizing for the value, so it was trying to maximize the value, and it actually achieved to maximize its value because it generated 4,000 points of value. So I'm saying point on value because you understand that the value is completely defined by your script. So if you're doing ROS, so the value here will be just the value of the conversion. So that's pretty easy to understand. But then if you're doing a weighted conversion or something that we've done, the value generated here is actually a mix of floodlights, of active view, and of pre-orders. So the next thing that you want to look at is first validate that the custom algorithm has generated more impression value. That should be the case. That's its goal. Its goal is to generate more impression value. The second step is to validate that your KPI is actually driving more business. So we might want to look at pre-orders on both groups and check if actually we generated more pre-orders on the group that was optimizing with a high value of pre-orders than on the other one. And if not, maybe that means that our KPI, the way we built it, was not perfect. So maybe there is a better KPI to build and to have the algorithm optimized against. And then once again, the algorithm will always, well, mostly always, generate more impression value than the control group. And then if your both groups are not same amount, then you can look at over cost. So just to validate that the value over cost is higher on the experiment group. I'm going to give the presentation back to Ober.
So, Erwan, thank you so much. We know it's a little bit of a complicated topic, custom bidding, but I think Erwan did a wonderful job presenting how to implement it. Now we're going to talk about the roadmap. As I said, custom bidding is relatively a new product, and we're launching new features on a quarterly basis. And I'm going to talk about two things that are coming up that will make the implementation and the daily work with custom bidding much easier. The first one will be next slide, thank you. The custom bidding goal builder, which essentially allows you to set up goals to optimize towards directly in the UI without having to write any script. You will be able to easily choose floodlights you want to optimize towards and assign a weight to each, allowing them to ensure our bidding algorithm value them appropriately. You will be able to customize your script without requiring any knowledge of Python or coding. The goal builder will guide you through the process directly in the UI, and you wouldn't be needed to touch any type of coding. The next one, you will be able to create custom bidding on an advertiser level. For the time being, creating custom bidding like Erwan presented is on partner level. Coming up very soon, you will be able to create and manage custom bidding algorithm at the advertiser level. You will have greater control on how you manage and create your scripts, and you can manage them across the partner for a specific advertiser, have more granular goals and KPIs, and so on. Yes, so now we're going to go to the QA part. The first part will be pre-submitted questions that you submitted over at the mail, and then we're going to move to the questions from the chat. So let's start. Question number 1. How long should we run the campaign for, and how many conversions needed for significant data?
So there is 2 things to take in account. So the first thing is how to build a model out of the data. So the first thing, as I was mentioning, was we need at least 1,000 positively scored impression to do so. So you need to write a script that will score historical data, enough historical impression to get the script. So that's the first thing to have into account. And then the second part of this question would be how long you want to test the campaign that is using the algorithm to validate that it's actually bringing value, and that will depend on the size of the campaign, but usually we recommend 2-3 weeks of A/B testing before seeing a significant uplift in terms of impression value.
Perfect. Next question. Can you optimize towards a low bounce rate? For example, bounce rate below 50%. That's actually a very good question, and the answer is very interesting, I think. You can define a goal in GA360 that corresponds to a non-bounce. Example, duration will be bigger than 0. Then use custom bidding to maximize the numbers of time this goal happens on DV360 campaigns, which completely means maximizing the bounce rate. So basically, you can create a GA goal that will have a connection to bounce rate, and then using custom bidding, you will be able to measure how many times it happens, how it happens, depends on your very own specific script that you build, weighted conversions, and so on. And then you can actually measure bounce rate and many other GA goals that we have. So the last question, what do you consider as positive impression? Can you explain it with an example or one? And you did it already, but so I think you can do it again.
Sure. So once again, a positive. So to go back, so once again, a positive impression is a positive that was given a positive score based on your script. So your script can give 3 types of output. Let's say the first thing, it cannot score an impression, in which case it will not be used in the model. That's very rarely used, but that's a use case. And then second case is the script can give it the score of 0. So that's an impression that you're not interested in because it's not generated any value. And then the third case is that your script gives the impression a positive value, and the positive value depending on all the metrics all the functions that we've seen earlier. So that can be, an example could be, did it generate a conversion? Did it generate a visit? So if yes, we're going to give it a positive score, and this positive score is the one that is going to be maximized by the algorithm.
Amazing. And now we're going to move to a few questions from the live chat. I'm going to start with Christelle's question. Is custom bidding set at a campaign level, or can it be at a line item level? So you create the custom bidding syntax and script on a partner level, but you can actually set it up on an insertion order level or a line item level. When you are working with automatically optimized bidding budget and insertion order level, you can choose the script from the drop-down menu under automated bidding, and it will be relevant to all of your line items under that IO. Or essentially, you can choose one line item and choose the custom script when you are optimizing on a line item level. So the creation of the script will be on a partner level, and actually assigning it to buying would be either on insertion order level or a line item level. Next question, will you release a tool for creating custom bidding, or will you stick to writing in Python? So as we saw on the products coming up, we're going to have a tool that you won't need to write any script at all. And hopefully those of you who are not acquainted with writing code will be able to assign your script pretty easily. So the next question will be from Celine. What's the recommended minimum runtime for the algorithm to work best? Erwan, you want to take it?
So once again, there's two ways to answer this question. So the first way is how long will the algorithm we take to create a model out of the algorithm? So that's usually 2 to 3 days. So that means analyzing historical data, last 30 days of advertiser data, to create a model that we are going to use to bid in the future. And the second way to answer this question would be how long to use this model. So in an A/B test, for instance, to maximize the impression value, and that's 2-3 weeks. That would depend indeed in the volume of data that is available in your campaign.
Okay, thank you. Next question by Theo. Does GA360 needs to be linked before you can use GA360 goals, or can competitors' GAID be used for certain custom biddings? So you do need to directly link your GA360 into your partner on DV360, and only those goals will be able to be optimized towards. Okay, another question, and probably the last one. There's a lot of them, so give me a second. Okay. So by Mattia, GA360 goals, is there a limitation of goals we can use in the script if we want to wait a final path? So you can put a lot of flight lighting goals that you can measure, and I did a few times measuring a full final path using a lot of goals. You can reach out to your account manager to know the exact number of limitation that you have in terms of goals, but if you want to reach a full funnel weight and effects, it shouldn't be an issue with custom bidding, and it's a very good use case of using GA goals with custom bidding.
I think I can add to that. So there is no limitation in number of goals in the script. So the only limitation in the script would be the number of characters in the interface. So you can use as many goals as you want. There is a limitation in number of goals in GA, though. So a view, I think, can't have more than 20 goals. That would be to double check because I'm not expert on GA, and so the limitation might be on the GA side, but on the custom bidding script side, there is no limitation.
True.
And I think there is a question that's interesting. I can take. So Eyal is asking if we can give a negative score. That's a good question. So you don't need to use a negative score. A negative score would be a 0. So an impression that is scored 0 is actually not what we are. It's actually providing the information to the modelization that you are not interested in this type of impression.
Super. So that's it all for today. Thank you so much for joining. We hope that you have a better understanding of what custom bidding is, how to implement it. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to your Google representative. We would like you to leave a feedback. We will send a link in the chat by the end of this webinar. And if you haven't signed up yet to the GMP Academy, all webinars around other products from GA, SA360, cross-product, campaign manager, now it's the time. Erwan, I want to thank you personally for joining and co-presenting with me. And
thank you.
Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you on the next webinar.